Authorities say they are closing in on the Army veteran suspected of killing his 3 young daughters. Investigators believing Travis Decker is still alive after hikers reported seeing someone matching his description in the woods. I'm Kennedi Walker, and I'll walk you through the details. You're watching Law and Crime.
We will not stop. We will keep going. He just has to make one mistake, like the sheriff said. We will find him. He will be brought to justice so the community can heal.
The search intensifying for Travis Decker after a group of hikers say they may have spotted him. According to the Chelan County Sheriff's Office, a man who appeared to be alone and ill-equipped for the trail and the weather was seen hiking in the Enchantments. A helicopter crew then saw someone who they believe was Decker near Colchuck Lake, but say he ran away after seeing the chopper. Canines were brought in and tracked him to Ingalls Creek Trailhead off Highway 97, but they lost him again.
We have found items that are of interest to us that perceive that it could be Mr. Decker. We've also continued to follow up with some of his friends and family, and we believe that we're closing in on his trail.
32-year-old former Army soldier seen here in recent doorbell footage is accused of killing his daughters, 9-year-old Peyton, 8-year-old Evelyn, and 5-year-old Olivia. Here's the timeline, according to police. May 30th, Decker picks up the girls for a scheduled visit. Their mom reports them missing later that same day when they don't come home. May 31st, police activate an endangered missing persons alert for the Decker sisters. Then, on June 2nd, Decker's truck is found near Rock Island Campground. After searching the area, law enforcement found the bodies of all 3 girls. Nearby, investigators find plastic bags and zip ties. An autopsy revealed the girls' cause of death was suffocation, and a coroner ruled their deaths homicides.
There is nowhere that he's going to be able to go that we don't have units waiting for him. King County Sheriff's Office has already been here assisting us. Snohomish County, been in touch with Okanagan County. We have Douglas County Sheriffs in close contact. They had the Grant County Sheriff today. He is surrounded. Washington State knows who he is. We're going to continue to be in there, and he's got a lot of ground to cover. Eventually, he's going to tire and he's going to make a mistake.
Prosecutors have charged Decker with first-degree murder, first-degree kidnapping, and custodial interference. Investigators believe Decker may attempt to cross into Canada after he allegedly searched how to relocate to Canada just before he disappeared. The campsite where Peyton, Evelyn, and Olivia were found is about 200 miles from the Canadian border and just 11 miles from the Pacific Crest Trail, a trail that leads directly to Canada. Police revealing that Decker is skilled in wilderness survival and could survive off-grid for weeks, maybe even months, with minimal supplies.
When talking with his father, it sounds at times that he would go out and would be leaving off-grid for sometimes up to 2.5 months. So we also understand too that he at times would do caching. So we understand that that's a possibility that he could have scoped out this area before, put supplies out there, and has the ability and the knowledge to survive for a long period of time.
Court documents obtained by Law and Crime show that Decker was homeless at the time of his disappearance and had been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. Back in September, Decker's overnight visits with the girls were revoked. The court order citing neglect of parental duties and emotional or physical problems affecting his ability to parent.
He was an engaged father. He did have some limitations on his parenting time due to his mental illness.
The mother's attorney in the custody case telling King 5 Seattle that Decker's struggles likely stemmed from his time in combat and that he tried to get help but ran into wall after wall trying to access veteran services.
She really feels that the system let her children down. It was the inadequacies in the services for our veterans that killed those children.
Now, the community is rallying around the girl's mother. An online fundraiser has raised over $1 million to cover funeral costs and other expenses. A $20,000 reward is being offered for any information leading to Travis Decker's arrest, but authorities are urging Decker to turn himself in.
Again, Mr. Decker is going to be able to dictate how this ends. We've encouraged him time and time again to give up, do so peacefully. That's what we're aiming for. But again, Mr. Decker is going to be the one who's going to dictate how this ends. We do not just deploy dogs just to deploy dogs. They're there to assist us in a tracking process and, of course, to protect the handlers. But he's going to be given the same professional courtesy as any other citizen within Washington State or the United States. We're going to follow de-escalation principles that are followed here in Washington State. We're going to communicate. We're going to do contact and cover, maintain our distance. Our intent is not to hurt or injure him. It is to bring him to justice and make sure that he's in good shape so he can face the trial.
And here to break down the story with me is retired NYPD detective David Sarney. David, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start with the manhunt. When you hear that hikers may have spotted Travis Decker, what's going through the minds of law enforcement in that moment?
Well, anytime you're doing an investigation and you're looking at a manhunt, you need the public's help. And the public assistance here has been beneficial because they did spot someone who did not seem like he was prepared to hike in those conditions. Notifications were made out. The police then had a helicopter nearby. They see this person. He ducks from the scene. They lose him in the brush, in a sense. So they have an idea of where he is. Now the accessibility part is coming into play. I believe they have some other forensic clues about campsites that might have been attempted to have been covered up. So now you're just going to hone in on that. How far could he go within the time frame of where this individual, this suspect, they believe it could be him. How far could he have gone between the time they saw him and the time they lose him? So now you're going to start really honing in on that location.
I want to thank Odoo for sponsoring this news package. Odoo is a powerful all-in-one business software that helps you manage everything from sales to accounting and, yes, inventory. Their inventory dashboard makes it easy to track receipts, delivery orders, POS orders, and see what's waiting, late, or back ordered at a glance. You can pay for receipts, automate vendor reminders, and schedule deliveries all in just a few clicks. Plus, you get full warehouse management, the ability to set picking strategies, and real-time stock visibility. And the best part, Odoo's inventory app syncs seamlessly with your sales and e-commerce apps, so everything stays connected. So right now you can get a free 15-day trial of Odoo's all-in-one business solution and see how it can make your life easier. Check it out at odoo.com/lcnewsinventory. Right. And so according to reports, there's been helicopters, canines, trail trackings, just trying to find him. How complex is it to coordinate a search like this?
It's very difficult for the sense that you have so many agencies involved, but there's always going to be a lead. And I believe the county sheriff's taking the lead on this investigation. One of the items they're also looking at, dealing with the press conference that I watched, they're changing their dynamic. They're changing the strategy. So they're looking at sort of a rapid advancing manhunt program called RAM. So they're going to probably change. He said they're changing the stylings of what they're doing, which means there's probably going to be fewer resources, meaning manpower, but more technology. And the good thing about this is the technology is they're going to be able to communicate rapidly. And that's really what it comes down to. Once they get some sort of clue, they're going to be able to respond quicker. And with the federal partners they're using Border Patrol, which is a great asset. They've notified the Canadian agencies up there if possibly he gets to that border. But it looks like he has not gotten there yet. He's still in that vicinity, and they're still honing in. And based on what you hear from the sheriff, they're looking for that mistake. And that's really what it comes down to. Any investigator knows there's nothing perfect. The murder takes place. He murders his children. He pre-planned that murder. What happens is you get to that part of it. The rest of it becomes there's nothing planned about the escape, in a sense. We thought that we see that usually there is, but there's no plan. He wants to get to Canada. Is that a route there? We don't know. We're just going to base it on, now you have an area in which you've seen somebody. Is that going to be that area? And you're going to focus on that. You're still going to take tips in from people and from the community and the public out there.
Well, you said something very important, that authorities, they are looking for that mistake, looking for Mr. Decker to slip up somehow. And so do you think that this is what the big mistake that they were looking for?
Yeah, there's mistake. That's what happens. When, he is a person who has gone off the grid, in a sense, but, he has to create a campsite. He has to be able to survive that part. And even when you survive that part, there are things that happen. You cannot be 100% perfect all the time. Law enforcement can't be 100% perfect, but we always look for that mistake that happens, that piece of evidence that was left behind. I know cases that I've done, we've had people who are very professional criminals, but they make mistakes. And that's what I think they're looking to see in this case, looking for that mistake and exploiting that mistake.
Given Mr. Decker's military background and his survival skills, though, what are the biggest fears that law enforcement may have right now?
One of the worries and the concerns has been with the public and sometimes with the sheriff's office is he armed? They have no reason to believe that, but it doesn't necessarily matter. This is a dangerous person. This is a person who's murdered his children and has fled the scene. So that's one thing. I mean, he's dangerous. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And the concern is what happens if he does see hikers out there. What could he do as a desperate person? Because how desperate is he going to get at this point? And he's been out there for this is almost a week going on, over a week, and you still haven't gotten him. And there's nothing wrong with that because he will be apprehended. It's just now, how desperate will it become? And the one thing is, it was just so interesting. He brought his dog with him, and they found the dog, and they secured his dog. So he doesn't have his dog. How prepared was he after the murder to survive in the woods? It gets cold no matter what. It's a forest. It gets cold. There's going to be something that's going to happen, and that's why I think with the chance of a campfire or something along those lines, and that's why they're using technology and heat-seeking devices and drones and helicopters. They're going to find him, but it's really a matter of, he's skilled, but skilled people do, flub it up.
Right. And like we mentioned, there's a lot of agencies helping with the search, including the National Guard. What role do you think the National Guard plays in a manhunt like this? What can they bring that local departments may not have?
They bring the resources, the manpower, the ability to have more people out, still conducting that boots on the ground type of search. And that's really what it is. Because, just to get your amount of numbers, you want to get more people involved. And that's why the National Guard is utilized. I mean, we want to get something, you can ask for the state's offices, you have state sheriff's office. You have a lot of that involved. But the National Guard is also another asset, another resource that could be utilized in this search for Travis Decker.
Now, we know that Mr. Decker, according to court documents, he has mental health issues. The mother's attorney told one of the local stations that they believe that the system failed this family. From a law enforcement perspective, how often do you see veterans fall through the cracks after service?
Now, mental illness is a factor we see in every facet of life. PTSD, they're believing that he is bipolar. These are things that come into play. He was diagnosed. He wasn't taking his medication. It's something we're seeing more and more. Mental illness is becoming a bigger factor in people. My whole thing was, this is where if he's having mental illness and the visitation rights were given, were there some sort of safeguards to make sure he's taking his medication and there is some sort of documentation? Because, this is where I know a lot of people were upset about is he had visitation rights and he had no real residence. He was homeless. But the relationship with the kids were there, and it never seemed they were concerned about the children's safe welfare at this point. They know he was, had animosity toward the ex-wife, and that's understandable given the fact of divorce and custody and the like. But, does that excuse him for what he did? No, because this was a plotted murder of his children. 3 kids were asphyxiated with bags on their head and zip ties. Zip ties were in the vehicle. This was a planned murder. So I don't know if you can actually say it's a mental illness thing, dealing with that. But what you're looking at this point is, it's something that you have to weigh in life in general. We're seeing is we're epidemic proportions dealing with people with mental illness.
Right. And just trying to get into his, I guess, just his mindset. From what we know, with him being an Army vet, a survivalist, living off the grid, what kind of mental state do you think someone like that might be in during a manhunt like this one?
Well, now people. He knows he's going to be looked for. He knows this is what's going to happen. That's why when we talk about that Canada, when I looked into the site about him, the Canada jobs, is that a red herring that he was putting out there, or was he really going to Canada? So he's getting, as the amount of time he's out there, does he have the supplies? Does he have the ability to consistently stay alive? And that's sometimes what'll happen is it becomes desperate. Especially, there's a difference between living on the grid without the pressure of law enforcement looking to apprehend you, but now the pressure of law enforcement to apprehend an alleged murderer at this case, and that's why they're still working the case. Right now, it's this is not, we don't know he did it, but it looks pretty much like he was involved. So that adds to the stress of this person, that he knows he killed his kids, he knows he's on the run, and it's just a matter of time. That's where the desperation comes in, and that's why sometimes people become more dangerous than expectations are. And that's why the notifications went out there saying, make sure your doors are locked, and make sure do not communicate with this person, because that's the reality. He's now extremely desperate, and if he's had issues of his mental illness, that just can be exacerbated.
Right. And that mental illness, we're told, is borderline personality disorder. How might that just intersect with his combat experience and what he's accused of doing?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, does that affect his reality, his belief in reality, or his concepts of reality? That's why the murder of his kids that he doted on is so out of context for what he is. But now we're seeing that doesn't matter. So did that come into play for the murder? But it's planned. So borderline personality disorder. There's somewhere along the line you have to sort of say, there is mental illness, but the actions that seem to have been committed by him were intentional. So you can't just say he just snapped. And that's the one thing we have to look at. He took his kids to the woods. He put bags in their head. He asphyxiated them. We don't know if they were struck in the head, but they were tied up with zip ties. I keep going back to this. It's a horrific way. I cannot imagine what the mother's going through, what the family's going through. But that part of the mental illness, I can't personally accept in that, because you plan that part. But the thing is, now he's desperate, he's dangerous, he has weapons training, he's been out in the field a very long time, and what could happen if he interacts with the public? So that's where we go back to this whole thing about his training is there. That's great, but now desperation comes in plus training. It can lead up to some seriously hazardous results.
Right. And just touching more on his personal life, because a lot of people go through custody issues. That happens every single day in this country, but still you don't really see things go this way. Again, we don't know if Mr. Decker has done this. He is accused, so everything is alleged at this point. But we know the custody case had already removed his overnight visits. How often do situations like this escalate from a custody dispute in your experience? And do you think that the court system missed red flags here? Because, like how you said, a lot of people are wondering, if he was homeless, how was he able to see his kids at all? How was he able to have these visitations?
Yeah, the issues with divorce laws and the volatility and the acrimony that comes through divorce and child custody is exacerbated a lot by the attorneys and the system itself. And a lot of times the father, and it's not always, but a lot of times the father loses custody, and it becomes very acrimonious. This is something that we have to really look at as far as how we handle each case. Judges sometimes should err on the side of caution, but a lot of times, this judge deemed it all right for him to be, even though he had no true residence, to actually have visitation at all. It wasn't, he didn't go to the house and stay with it wasn't supervised at the ex-wife's residence, which is probably the best thing to do. He comes over for 2 hours a day. That would have made sense. But this is something, and that's why the Amber Alert became a problem. And I know people were upset about the Amber Alert, but he was within his time frame, and then he went outside his time frame. But there was nothing that said he was injuring the kids, and I think that's what it comes down to. Is as people go through divorces and child custody, sometimes these people snap, and when I say snap, I said they get so angry at the system and so angry at the opposing party that they will do something to injure that party one way or another, be it violence against a pet, be it violence against a person, or violence against things that they love. And this could be a reason why, and this, again, speculation, this may be a reason why he killed his children, to get back at his wife somehow. His ex-wife somehow. This will all come out as the investigation continues and when the apprehension takes place, and the arrest and the prosecution.
And let's just talk more about that Amber Alert, because I know a lot of people were confused about that as well. Shortly, according to reports, Mr. Decker took the kids. He was only supposed to have them for a few hours. The mother, after a few hours, was She called him trying to figure out where the kids were. His phone was going straight to voicemail. The mom went to police, told police what was going on, and asked them to do an Amber Alert. Police declined because they didn't think that there was any imminent danger to the kids. Do you think that that was a mistake? And why do officers make that decision? Because I'm just wondering, if the Amber Alert was put in place, could they have found Mr. Decker in time?
Yeah, an Amber Alert is just going to notify law enforcement and powers out there about these people missing, and they'll maybe whatever information they have about the vehicle, they'll put it out. We see that done on highways and the like. I don't know as to the reason as to why they didn't do it. I could see why they did not do it, because they felt there was no danger. But sometimes you're better off erring on the side of caution. It comes back to, like, one of those things that you should have done. They're going to look back and saying, now what are we going to change the protocols and policies for Amber Alerts? They've never had an incident with him before, or the family. They felt that it was only a couple hours, not that long ago. He'll be back. Would that have stopped what happened in the woods, in the forest? No. That's the problem. Like, we don't have, the exact time in this, when these murders took place. We have no time of when he got to that location exactly yet. I guarantee they pinged it. But it comes back to the fact that if the Amber Alert was put out at that time, was he already, were the children already murdered? In that, were they already murdered? But I look at it this way: I'm always on the error side of caution. I don't see why they shouldn't have, but I can understand why they didn't. So maybe it'll be a policy change about that when parents come in, and it's not that much. It's not a heavy lift, an Amber Alert. We call silver alerts for missing adults who are vulnerable. So in the missing persons, we do investigations. So this could have been administratively relatively quickly, just to make a notification, because we don't know what's happening yet. But unfortunately, they felt, like the judge did, that there was no real issue with the family, with Mr. Decker at that point.
And police say that Mr. Decker Googled how to relocate to Canada days before he vanished. How would digital breadcrumbs like that help in the investigation?
Well, that's the one thing. I mean, that's why they started to notify law enforcement partners out in Canada of the possibility of him getting out there. So these are things we look at, and when you look at, could this be a red herring? Could he have not just said he's going to Canada and not go to Canada? You have to weigh all these things, but it is evidence. There's a trail, and every investigator takes anything they have and they exploit that evidence to the best of their ability to where it exhausts. It either is a positive lead, it is probative, or it's not probative. And that's up to, that's how the investigations take place. Not every piece of evidence will conclude to the apprehension or arrest of somebody, but it's something that needs to be exploited. And that's why they looked at that as part of it. And the phones, and they check on the phones, and they try to do cell site searches, and they ping the phone to see if it's operational or not. These are things that all the technology we're using. And I guarantee you, with this RAM program they're using, this rapid manhunt program, they're looking in that way too. They're going to start using a lot more technology, because he's out there. He has no phone. Phone was left on the scene that we're aware of. Does he have a burner phone? Does he have a comp? Does he have any electronic devices? That's one thing they'll be looking to do. And this is one good thing: bodies have heat. So I guarantee they're using any heat-seeking opportunities to locate him.
And if we can just talk more about just the conditions that not only is Mr. Decker going through as he is on the run, but that police are dealing with. And I know you mentioned something about weather. It gets cold at night. It's probably raining. Just a bunch of conditions that we may not know about if we don't live in the state.
Well, that's the thing. I'm not there, but when you're out in an area like that, the elements do affect the manhunt in a sense. So that's why they were using dogs, using canine to get out there, and that's why it was beneficial that people saw something and said something. They saw a person who did not seem to be appropriately dressed for hiking in that area. They made the notification, and that's when police responded. So, and the thing is, police also have to deal with the amount of the hours out there, I don't know what kind of tours or shifts they're doing, but they're out there for an enormous amount of time, and you're working as hard as you can. Can you get fatigued? Absolutely. And now you have to rotate people out. That's why it looks like, as far as manpower concerns, they're bring it down a little bit as far as manpower is concerned or human resources, but they're going to be the technology resources, which don't get tired.
And we know it's been more than a week, days and days at this point. Just when you look at everything we know so far, what's your gut telling you about how this manhunt might end?
Well, you could look at it two possible ways. He's going to be apprehended alive, or or his body's going to be found. That's usually one of the two things that happen. Or he fights his way, and then that's another part of it. But given the fact that these, we've seen people, kind of disappear, go off the grid. Eventually, they get caught. It may not be immediate. That's why I always tell people, we talk about detective work and police work. It's not 47 minutes without commercials. It's a painstaking time process. That's the thing. He had time and advantage of time and distance and location. Now we're catching up. The police are catching up to that distance and location. Now it's just a matter of time to locate him and bring him into custody. It'll take some time. It may not be today. It may be later tomorrow. It may be next week. But I will tell you, the resources that are being put out there, and the sheriff's office is adamant about apprehending him and bring him in and take him into custody.
Well, this is something that we are following very closely. David, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me, and stay safe.
Authorities are asking anyone who has seen Travis Decker to call 911 immediately or to call the CCSO at 509-667-6845. Decker is described as 5'8" and 190 pounds with black hair and brown eyes. For Law and Crime, I'm Kennedi Walker.